is the Shabbos, either the first Shabbos of Hanukkah or the Shabbos that's like this week, Mevarchim Kislev, or around Yutas Kislev. So there's Shabbos Mevarchim Teves. So let's bring up the Sicha. Hey, Barbara.
Hi, Rebbe.
Okay, so we're learning Sicha Shabbos Parshas Vayeshev, Mevorchim Teves, also Erev Chanukah. So it's similar to this year. I'm not sure if it's exactly this year. This year we have Chanukah on Sunday night. Maybe that year was Motzei Shabbos. That's possible. So the Rebbe says like this: B'Yutas Kislev Tavshin Daled. Again, Shabbos Vayeshev is always around between Yutas Kislev and Chanukah, or the first Shabbos of Chanukah. So it's around the times of Chanukah and Yutas Kislev. So the Rebbe would follow up the Farbrengen of Yutas Kislev. So the Rebbe says like this: in the year Yutas Kislev Tavshin Daled, which is 1953-54. Siper Kvaikdish Marachami Admer. My father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, tells over. Oides with regard to Yutas Kislev of the year Tov Reish Samach Zayin, which is the Yutas Kislev, when his father was already the Rebbe, which is 1917 or 1916. Sha'az Haya Aviv Kvaikdish Admer Marashab, then his father, meaning the previous Rebbe's father, the Rebbe Rashab, B'chutzlarts, he was outside. B'chutzlarts those days meant not outside of Eretz Yisrael, but chutzlarts meant outside of Russia. It says that he was in Würzburg, Deutschland. He said the Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab in 1917, 1670, going into 17, he was in chutzlarts, outside of Russia, in Germany. Vehigia nashim im kaima and people from that area, from Würzburg in Germany, came to visit the Rebbe Rashab. And my father, the Rebbe, meaning the Rebbe Rashab, this is again fifth Rebbe Chabad, Shalom Dov Ber Schneerson, the father of the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. So my father, meaning the previous Rebbe, evidently traveled with his father then to Würzburg, Germany, and he's telling over what the Rebbe Rashab said to this group of people in Würzburg, Germany. Evidently, they were less connected to Hasidic ideas over there, and therefore he had to speak something more in their language, something more in the Ashkenaz language that they could understand. What the idea that he spoke about, so this is Yutas Kislev, 1916, 17, going into 17, in Würzburg, Germany. So what he said was like this: Hashar Yutas Kislev of the Parshas Vayeshev. What's the connection to Yutas Kislev to the Parsha? Yidua, because we know Mashakosef Ashalah, the Shlah HaKadosh, Shamoidim Shakol Hashan, and the Rebbe quoted this many times. Shamoidim Shakol Hashan yesh shayches la'oisin parshas shechalis behen. That we know that the holidays have a connection to the Shabbos Parsha of the week. So if you have Purim around Tetzava, Truma Tetzava, Kisisa, if you have Shavuos is around Bamidbar, Nasa, etc. Pesach is usually around Tzav. So depending on the parsha, the holiday is connected. We could find a connection between the holiday and the parsha of the week. Shechal Talmud Parshas Vayishlach or Parshas Vayeshev. That we find that always Yutas Kislev falls out around the weeks of Vayishlach, and that's why a lot of the discourses and even the Alter Rebbe's letter he writes after Yutas Kislev, he's quoting the idea of Katainti, the idea of the Parshas Vayishlach. It's connected either to Vayishlach or Vayeshev. The Parshas Vayishlach. What does Vayishlach talk about, which was last week's Parsha? Oides HaMalachim Asher Malchu. It talks about the kings that were kings, Lifnei Melech Malach Lifnei Yisrael. That means the final two readings of Parshas Vayishlach last week, after we learned about the interaction between Yaakov and Esav and the story of Shechem and all that, we learned that the final two readings of the Parsha deal with the family of Esav and the kings that come from the dynasty of Esav, which is Edom. And we mentioned the kings that are kings of Edom, which is the land of Esav who Edom, which were kings before the kings of Israel. Shu'inin Olam Atayu, as we learned in the Maimer this week, that they are the world of Esav, and the kings of Esav represent the world of Tehu, which is the world of chaos. Because it was a chaotic world, meaning there was no structure, and no balance. So there was great lights, and the vessels weren't strong enough to hold the lights, and those are weak vessels. So there was a breaking of the vessels, and the lights went back up to its source, and all impurities and all sparks. The whole idea of birurim, to separate, starts from the breaking of the vessels. So you have to, like when you shatter a vase, right? So you have to pick up the pieces. So the past 5,786 years, we've been picking up the pieces. So how do you fix when you break something? Like I said, you have to pick up the broken pieces. So we have to elevate. It means the sparks fall into, we call them physical hosts. And these, you have to interact with the host one way or the other. There's different ways, different hosts and different ways of interacting with them. But one way or another, you have to get the spark, to release the spark from the impure host that's hosting this spark. Shnasa idei Torah Chassidus, and the final step of elevating and fixing the world of Teu, the world of chaos, and elevating the sparks is through the teachings of Chassidus. Shnigala b'Yotis Kislev, and the teachings of Chassidus were redeemed on Yotis Kislev, because on Yotis Kislev there was an adversary. There were voices that says that we shouldn't be teaching the teachings of Chassidus, that the Rebbe shouldn't be teaching, the Jewish people shouldn't be learning Chassidus. And because of that, it would affect how we pick up the pieces, because we need Chassidus to pick up the broken pieces. This is a teaching how the Rebbe Rashab explained the people of Würzburg, Germany, what is Yotis Kislev? What are we celebrating here? Well, that's the connection to Vayishlach. Because in Vayishlach we learn about the kings that are the kings of the world of chaos. Or Parshas Vayeshev. When we come into this week's parsha, Shascholahi, what's the beginning of this week's parsha? Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz meguri aviv. The Yaakov settled in the land of his father. V'apirish b'zeh. What does it mean that he settled in the land of his father? Sha'inin sha'yu etzel Yitzchak ba'ofen shal moira megurei miloshin mogur moira ha'yu etzel Yaakov ba'ofen shal yashvas. Things that were by Yitzchak. We know Yitzchak is the attribute of Gevura, severity. In severity from there is the root of where we have Yira, fear. So in the place that by Yitzchak was a fearful place, Megurei, a place of fear, by Yaakov it was a place of Hisyashvus. He was able to settle in that. Fear is creates a distance and a tension. Yaakov was able to be miyushav, settled in the place where by his father there was the attribute of fear. What does this mean? So he explains, Yitzchak hu inyan ha'gvura. Yitzchak is severity. Avaloi stam gvura. It's not just any kind of severity. El gvura salyon is great, holy severity. It means sometimes gvura could be strict, disciplined, limited, right? That name Elikim comes from gvura. So that's when it manifests in the tzimtzum, in the way of sometimes when you're talking about harsh, gvura could be harsh. But over here we're talking about Yitzchak, we're talking about gvura salyon, it's holy gvuros. The gvur in the world of the highest manifestation. Atik is the point of creator, not in creation, which is represented by the concept of pleasure. Asher kiven sheles smola b'hayatika, and in the place of Atik, in the pleasure place of God, so to say, there is no left, meaning to say there's no place of negativity. So gvur is not negative. Hari inin hagvura hush tagvuras hamshach b'yaser. So therefore, by Yitzchak, that's why we find the great blessings were blessings that were given by Yitzchak. So if you're in the place of Gvura, also is strength. So it's the strength, usually the strength of limitation. But because we're in a place that there's no left, there's no negative, there's no holding back. So we're talking about a strength of empowerment, of pushing forward. That's like we say, Gvuras Kshamim, when you have powerful rains. Rain is a blessing. When you have powerful rains, it's a stronger blessing. Israel just experienced this yesterday. Eretz Yisrael. And because there's such gevura, makes people fearful. People, there's fear of not scared of punishment, but fear of overwhelmingness. And also, when things come down powerfully, we don't know how it's going to come down. When things come down slowly, right? There's the chesed. When chesed comes down, the tradition is it comes down slower. When it rains strong, you don't know the consequences. It's hard to tell. You don't know if it's going to be a blessing. You don't know if it's going to be too strong. The kivin shemedubra oidis madregas nas b'yos, because we're talking about these great levels. Sheba nemrim tzedakta matitin lev rabba b'shach matasaloi. We're talking about places that their sources and the place of godliness where you can't sort of say God's not responding in tzedakta. If you're tzaddik, if you're doing tzedek, if you're doing righteous, you haven't added to God. And if you sinned, you haven't affected God. So when there's a flow coming from that place, where not your good actions really are adding to God, and your bad actions are not taking away from God, you're not affecting God. So when something's flowing from there, you never know how it's going to come down. So this, what is the concern? The concern is that there's going to be unikos hachitzainim, because it's not because of good or bad, and there's a powerful force coming down. That's how the forces of evil, the forces of external, which are chitzainis, are impurity, they siphon off this energy because they want to tap into the place that's so high that there's no place for sin or righteousness. And then, if the righteous aren't better and the sinner isn't worse, why can't we have? Because in that place, darkness and lightness is all equal. As the Medrash teaches, that because of when there's a lot of flow, and that's why Esav comes from Yitzchak. When there's a lot of flow, there could be, sigin are like strains of negativity that siphon off it. Even though by Yitzchak we were fearful of how this flow would come down. But nevertheless, Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz Meguri Aviv. This week's parsha starts off that Yaakov goes into the place who have fear from his father. He's able to bring it into his yashvus in a way of miyushav, that's settled. What does that mean? Yaakov was able to take his father's powerful energy and to internalize it and to bring it in a way, miyushav means settled, where relax everyone. We have this, we're going to control this. As the Rebbe Rashab explained, the Jews gathered for Yitas Kislev in Würzburg, Germany in 1916, that he said in Yiddish, Yaakov hat sich a Tresel getan, aber Paul sheyimshach bis Yashvus. Yaakov got a little fearful. Tresel means he shook, but he was able to work it out to bring it down in a way of Hisyashvus. That's the whole avoda. The whole avoda is the idea of to be Hisyashvus. Hisyashvus means you settle things. When things are settled, so even if you have great things, it's a big avoda. It's only the strongest of people are able to take something so great and something vulnerable and to bring in a way of Hisyashvus in a way that it's settled. What does this have to do with Yitas Kislev? And the Rebbe continues, what's the connection between this and Yitas Kislev? Because that's what the ideas of the teachings of Chassidus are. To take great lights, great teachings, great secrets, and not just to overwhelm, and not to bring them in a way that could chas v'shalom be damaging, but in a way that are coming down in a way of Hisyashvus that comes settled in, that you're actually taking great ideas, and you could be miyushav with it. You could be settled with these great ideas, i.e. the teachings of Chassidus. So Rebbe, this is the story that the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe says about Yitas Kislev 1916-17 in Würzburg, Germany. Again, I say 16-17 because it's around New Year's. And as every story, when we're talking about the leaders of the Jewish people, and the Rebbe Rashab was the leader of the Jewish people, with something we could learn from this. Doiver come upon, we spoke many times, we've talked many times, the Rebbe said, about how great it is for a person to engage in this avodah of birurim, to separate and pick up the sparks, specifically when you go to far out places. And we find this by Yaakov, that he didn't settle, he didn't rest. That he spoke how he worked through the day hard and through the night hard, in the frost, in the heat. He didn't sleep. Because he went out. In those days he went far. Charan was far. What is it? Charan is 1,000 kilometers from Eretz Yisrael. To what? To go deal with this birurim, to pick up the sparks that were fallen in the place of Charan. And what's Charan? We know, and Chassidus explains, Charan is Charan Avshal Mak Oilam, the place of anger, where God is angry, the people are angry. Like the Rebbe said many times, that made Yaakov successful. That the Torah testifies about Yaakov, that he pirates, he expanded very much, both in success on all levels. Excuse me, L'mayla Yitzchak, even greater than his father Yitzchak. As the Rebbe talked in that year, 19, here if I'm bringing 1949, 1958, 59, the Rebbe spoke about this on Yud Kislev of this year. She'inyan de Meguri Aviv, she'etzel Yitzchak hayu b'ofen shel Moira. That when Yitzchak had things of fear, Nimshach etzlai b'ofen shel Yashvus, Yaakov was able to be things that were fearful. We weren't certain how it's going to be. It means the fear is the uncertainty. Yaakov had it was calmly because he was able to, because of the avoda, because he went out to far places, and he wasn't scared to deal and engage, and to go out there, and he didn't sleep at night, and he dealt with the frost and the heat. So therefore, he was able to be vifra. It's not just that he was wealthy in the bank account, but he became great himself. That he was able to be settled with these ideas. And he was able to take the blessings that he took from his father. His father blessed him when he took the blessings of Vayitin Chalikim, the great blessings of Yaakov, of Yitzchak. The may Elikim give you. Bechinas HaGvuras, so Elikim is talking about the highest level of Gevura, of power. V'nisbarech be'eser brachos, and he took the 10 blessings, shekeneg the eser mamoris, which correspond to the 10 utterances of the world. Mitala shemayim mishmani aretz beruchnis begashmis. He was able to take it and to affect in this world and take the blessings in this world, that it affected him because he went out there and he did avoda. So he had both the blessings spiritually and both materially, and therefore he was wealthy both spiritually and both materially. And the Rebbe continues. V'sayim kvoi kedush am shlita. And the Rebbe finishes this opening talk. Because we're starting the new Chassidic year, which is the 19th of Kislev, Rosh Hashanah Torah Chassidus, which is the new year for the teachings of Chassidus, for Darkei Chassidus and the ways of Chassidus. So the Rebbe is blessing everyone, and he's blessing us now tonight. That Yamshichu Zayis Kol Hashana. We should bring this down on the whole year. That our voda and our interactions in our own personal avoda, to go out there and to pick up the sparks, the birurim, to go separate the good from the bad. And like Yaakov, we should bring down the great powers of the gvura, of the energy of gvura, and from the place of atik, of the highest place, so to say, where it's God's pleasure. Lamata, we should bring it down by It shouldn't be in a way of overwhelming us or overwhelming the space that we're trying to engage in. But we should bring it in a way of Isyashvus, it should be settled, and it should be in a way of Kol Hashanah Kula, not just now, but throughout the year. We should be successful in what we're trying to do with our purpose in this world. And to be effective in a way of Isyashvus, we're actually settling it, we're affecting. When you do something in a way of Vayeshev, Isyashvus, settled, it's benefit for you, it's a benefit for what you're engaging in, because everyone receives it in a proper way, in a proper, settled way. Okay, that's the Rebbe's opening talk of Shabbos Vayeshev, blessing the month of Tevis, of the Erev Chanukah of the year Tavshin Yutes, and the end of 58 going into 59. The Rebbe continues talking in the next talk. V'sima Parsha, at the end of this week's Parsha, meaning Parshas Vayeshev, which we're talking about Yosef, and he interacts with the ministers of Paro who were thrown into prison for the various sins they did in their service of Paro, is Mesupra Oides HaChaloim Shesara Mashkin. We learn about the dream of the wine pourer, right? The wine pourer, there was a bug in the wine, and a bug in the wine is a sentence of, he's lucky he wasn't sentenced to death, he was sentenced to prison. So what is his dream? So he has a dream. Yosef is the one who interprets the dream. So the dream is, V'hinei gefen lefanai, u'begefen shalosh srigim. He sees the gefen is the vine, and from the vine is the 3 srigim. Srigim are the small vines that come off the main vine. So the V'hinei, that, and Yosef listens to his dream, and the whole dream of the wine and the cup, and he's pouring the cup in Paro, and then the end of the dream, the translation, the interpretation of the dream is that he's going to be taken out of prison, he's going to get his job back, and of course Yosef asks him to remember him, and he doesn't remember him. That's how the parsha ends, Vayishkacheyu, he's forgotten. V'hinei, the Rebbe says like this, Klos hachaloim shel Sarah Mashkin, in Chassidus, we don't like the Sarah Mashkin much. He's on the list of Paro and other enemies of the Jewish people. The Torah tells us he consciously forgot about Yosef. He had no interest, and even when he asked to tell Paro later about Yosef, he says it all in derogatory manner. So in general, he's not a hero for the Jewish people. But either way, there's some things about his dreams that we learn about. When we analyze the dream of the wine pourer, Reimers is brought down in Chassidus that this hints on the idea of Geulah Asida, of the final redemption, meaning the redemption that we're waiting to happen any day soon. Kedesiv Medrash, the Medrash teaches us. It mentions in the dream as he's talking, it says the word kois, a cup, the goblet, it says four times. When we move in, and we know the number 4, the significance of that. Shegam kol pratin yanim shebachaloim koil gam v'gefen shalis rigim im pratim yanya geula dasida. So the Medrash says the 4 cups. We know that there's four languages of redemption. Like when the Jewish people left Egypt, there was the 4 languages of redemption. So there's the 4 cups that represent the concept of redemption. So the Rebbe says it's not just the 4 cups, but everything about the dream is something that's connected to hint to us and to teach us about the future redemption that we're waiting for with Mashiach. We'll understand the connection of the dream of the water pourer with what our rabbis have taught us. So we'll analyze the verse, and and it says like this. It's brought down in Chazal, Gefen Eli Yisrael. When we talk about Gefen, which is the vine, that's the source of the grapes, is the Jewish people. So the Gefen itself, the actual vine itself, is the Jewish people. Shloisha Serigim, what are the 3 small branches that, those are the branches that hold the eshkol, the cluster of grapes. The Shloisha Serigim, what are the 3 Serigim, small branches that come off the main vine? Zeo, the 3, what's the number 3, right? Who knows 3? The 3 fathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And also, not just Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but the 3 groups of the Jewish people, Kohanim, Levim, and Yisraelim. The Kohens, the Levites, and the Israelites. V'oid Pirish, another idea is that Gefen, the vine, Ze Yerushalayim, is the city of Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. Shleisha Srigim, what are the 3 small branches? Ze Migdash, Melech, v'Kohen Gadol. The 3 main institutions that ran out of Jerusalem, which was the Beis HaMikdash, the king, right? King David's palace was in Jerusalem, city of David, the Kohen Gadol, and the high priest's office. Ubehegdim, the Rebbe says. Haidua, shekol ha'giluim d'lasid, that we know the rule is that whatever is going to be revealed when Mashiach comes, Tuluim b'maseinu v'avodseinu kol zman meshech hagol. It's based on, we're not going to have revelations that has nothing to do with now. Whatever we're doing now, we're working, and it's going to be revealed what we're doing now when Mashiach comes. So any kind of revelations that's going to happen when Mashiach comes is based on things that we're doing now. This is understood. So if what we're doing now is going to be revealed when Mashiach comes, that means that we have to go backwards as well. What's going to be when revealed when Mashiach comes, we have it now. But it's now in a way of concealment. If that's the case, turns out we can connect these ideas together. It says everything's really connected. Whenever you have a teaching of a verse or a connecting idea, it's all connected. Sometimes we know the connection, sometimes we don't know the connection. Sometimes we're going to only know the connection when Mashiach comes. So what's the Rebbe saying? The idea is like this. When we say Gefen, that divine Eli Yisrael, this is the Jewish people. So we said this Gefen. And we also, there's another explanation is that the Gefen is either the Jewish people, the vine is the Jewish people, or the vine is Jerusalem. So what does that mean? What's the connection between the Jewish people and Jerusalem? When Mashiach comes, every person is going to be revealed within the person, the Jerusalem within the person. Gefen Zeh Yerushalayim, that when we say that Gefen, the vine, is the Jewish people, and the 3 small branches is Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, or Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. So, and we said another explanation was that the Gefen is Jerusalem. So we have to combine Gefen is Jerusalem with Gefen is the Jewish people, which means that when Mashiach comes, we're going to see the Jerusalem within every Jewish person. So too, the connection between the idea that the 3 vines off the main vine, which is Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim, or Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Shem Gimel Akavim Chesed Gvur Tveres, that the difference between, we know Kohanim is Chesed, Levites is the world of Gvura, Yisrael is Teferes, is the combination of the 2. So lots of love when Mashiach comes. Tia shleimusa migoli gam begimel hanyonim the migdash melech v'kain gadol shiyu kulam al mechaynam. That Mashiach comes, we're going to, just like we have the structure of Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael, so too Mashiach comes, we're going to have the completeness of the concept of the temple, the concept of the king, and the concept of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest. And what does this mean? Prati says, so the Rebbe is going to explain. Chiluk ben Geffen l'shleishes rigim. What is the difference between the vine, the main vine, and the small branches that come off the vine? Hu shesrigim hey minyanim pratim. The vine is the general, is the main tree, so to say, the main source. The small branches are already individual pratim, the details. Ve'ilu ha-geffen hu guf hadavar. But the geffen is the main thing. V'zeu geffen eli Yisrael. That's what it means to say that the vine, the main vine, is the Jewish people, and geffen zeh Yerushalayim, the main vine is Jerusalem. Why? Ki Yerushalayim, when we talk about Jerusalem, hu al shem yira v'al shem shalim. The name Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, means yira, fear, and shalom, complete fear, or absolute fear. Kedisi b'Tosfos, as Tosfos teaches us, Shuinyan Shleimus HaYira. That means the highest level of fear is represented by the city of Yerushalayim. In every Jew is Geffen, every Jew has to have Yerushalayim. Every Jew has to have the absolute highest level of fear. That's applicable to every Jew. That's the klal. That's the rule. What defines a Jewish person is the Jewish person's fear and nullification to Hashem, to God, and to His Torah and to His commandments, His mitzvahs. Rabbeinu Zaken, as the Alter Rebbe from Yutas Kislev, the Baal Geulah of Yutas Kislev said, a Jew cannot and doesn't want to be separated from God. As Tanya explains, as the famous chapter 41 in Tanya says, that the avoda of yira, of fear, is reishis avodah. It's the beginning of servicing God, the ikra, and the main part of serving God, v'sharsha, and the root of serving God. So what is Yerushalayim? Jerusalem stands for the absolute fear. Shezui yira ilah, which is the highest level of fear. We know there's lower fear, fear of punishment, fear of disconnect, or fear in the level of awe of God. And in Tanya, when you're talking about Reishis Avoida is talking about the lower level of fear. So Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, is the highest level of fear. And in Tanya, we're talking about the basic level of fear. The idea that a person has to think means that you just literally pay attention to the fact that God's watching everything that you do. Like the Rebbe says, everything's interconnected. The highest level of fear, which is to be absolute in awe of God, and the low level of fear, just to be fearful of the disconnect or disappointing or even being punished by God. So how does a person? What's the vessel to have the higher level of fear, which is to be not of God, is to have the basic level of fear, to be fear of doing what's wrong, to have fear of disconnect, of punishment even. So that's the avodah. So the Rebbe says every Jew is a geffen. Number one is you got to have Yerushalayim in you. You have to reveal the Yira Shalim, the complete absolute fear of God, the connection, the awe of God, even the level of Yira Ilah, which is the idea of connection of avoda, of bittul, of nullification to God, Torah, mitzvahs. The Rebbe continues, and so too. Yesh v'avodas kolach Yisrael heim shleishes rigim migdash melech v'kohen gadol. That's the general. But then also we have the details in our avoda. Every Jew has within themselves a temple. Every Jew has within themselves the component of the king, man malke rabbanon, and every Jew has within themselves the concept of a high priest. Amr Chazal, the Rebbe says the rabbis have taught us. Shleishik Sarumen, there's 3 crowns. It's brought down in Pirkei Avos. Keser Torah, Keser Kahuna, Keser Malchus. There's the crown of Torah, the crown of the priesthood, and the crown of the king, of Malchus. This is the idea of the temple, the high priest, and the king. Kohen Gadol, the high priest, is the Keser Kuna, obviously, the crown of the priesthood. Melech, what's the idea of a king? Is the Keser, is the crown of Malchus, of royalty. Umigdash, and what's the definition of the temple? Is Keser Torah, is the crown of Torah. Ki Iker Inyan Migdashu, Hashar Sashchina. What is the definition of of the Beis Hamikdash is that God rests amongst the Jewish people. Like it says, "V'asuli Migdash, make me a temple, v'shachanti b'sochem, and I'll rest amongst you." And what does it say when the temple is destroyed? Where is God? In Dal Damas Shal Halacha, in Torah, in the law. And where was the main part of where God was in the ark. In the Holy of Holies. Therefore, there's those who count the idea of making the ark as part of the mitzvah of making a temple, because you can't make a temple if you don't have the ark. And even if in the second temple the ark was there, but it was hidden. Shinyanihu Kli Torah. And what's the ark? The ark is the vessel that holds the 10 Commandments, which is Torah. And also there was a Torah in the ark. The Rebbe adds to that. We know that there's the fourth level of the crown of the good name. As explained before in other places, what's the difference between the crown of royalty, the crown of Kohen, the high priest that every person has, and the crown of Torah of the Beis Hamikdash? So those are the concepts. What is the crown of the good name? Is the action, how you act on all that. Is the ma'aseh b'poil, is the action. Even though seemingly the action is lower than the concept of Torah, the concept of royalty, the concept of the high priest. The idea is that at the end of the day is to just actually do the mitzvah. It also means to force yourself. A person sometimes has to be forced to give charity. Sometimes you know everything. You have the crown of royalty. You have the crown of the Kohen Gadol in you, of the high priest. You have the crown of Torah. But you don't actualize on it. So then you have to have mice, not just that you have to have the action, but you have to have the forcing of the action, that mice in al tzedakah. You have to force yourself to give the charity. You'll be forced to give the charity. What does this mean to force yourself in action? That's the highest level. The highest level is when you know what you're supposed to do. You have all the other three crowns, but you can't act on it. The hardest thing is when you have to force yourself to act on something. The first three crowns. That's each one represents your royalty within you, your kingship within you, the Torah within you. But when it comes to forcing yourself to act on all three or one of the three, whatever you're struggling with, that's not a specific character trait. That is the essence, because that's the kavanah. At the end of the day, is what God wants from us is the action. It's the world of asiyah, of action, not concepts. As the Rebbe explained in the Maimer, which is based on the Maimer that the Rebbe said that year, which is connected to the Maimer of the fourth Rebbe Chabad, Reb Shmuel Schneerson, and Rebbe Miraj. What's it mean when we say in the Shema with all your might? You have to dedicate all your money to Hashem. A person should have no limits when it comes to charity. Not only do you count every penny to make sure you don't give more than 10% or more than 5%, 20%, 1/5. Just like a person would give anything to save their own life, right? If you had to pay a doctor to save you, a normal person wouldn't say, well, the doctor doesn't have a medicine. It's 100% going to work, but you're going to have to give me all your money. So, it's life, right? You're ready to give everything for your life. But when in Nisgala ain't safe for Maisa. So what is the idea? The Rebbe Miraj says it's the revealing of the limitless, Ein Sof, the infinite, within action. But Dafka de Maisa b'Poyel, and when a person actualizes, it doesn't stay a concept. Poilim, we are effective. That elevates the whole purpose of creation, the whole chain of creation. Like we talked about before many times, the lever that picks up a car or a house. You can't pick up midway. If you're going to try to pick up the house in the middle, it's just going to fall separate. But only if you pick it up from the bottom, you can lift up the whole house. So to Maisa, the action lifts up whole creation. And all the higher parts get elevated automatically. As you said before, there are things that we're going to know, we're going to see clearly when Mashiach comes, And there's other things that the same things are here, they're just concealed. What are you doing? The Rebbe says, what does it mean that things are concealed? But sometimes the reason why it's concealed because it's too high at this point to be revealed. Kamashal Arav, like a teacher. We know that a teacher sometimes has a great idea, but in the teacher's mind, it's so deep and so powerful that if he would try to communicate it, or he or she to communicate it to the student, it would be overwhelming. So the teacher, he or she has to kind of withdraw, conceal the depth of it to be able to give something over that the student could accept. So what do we see? That the fact of what is a helam? Helam means it's too great to reveal. Not only that, the power to conceal something and not let it just flow through has to be like anything. The thing that's holding something back has to be stronger than the thing that's being held back. Right? Like you have the alloys when you try to put aluminum through to make a profile. It has to be a steel die, and the steel is stronger than the aluminum, so then it can hold it back. Otherwise, it's just going to be mush. Because the koach hanelam, the power to withhold has to be stronger to be able to control that it shouldn't reveal everything. The power to hold back is stronger than the power to reveal because it's holding back something that wants to be revealed. And that's what our teachers have taught us. Better be involved in tshuva and ma'asim tovim, tshuva and good deeds in this world than whatever is going to be coming in the world to come. Why? Even though what we're doing here is low level, seemingly. But that's what Hashem wants. Like we said before, like we said before, you have to pick up the bottom of the house, and then you pick up everything. That's the idea of Kesser Shem Tov. That's why the Mishnah says that the crown of good name, and what's the good name? The action is the highest of all the crowns. Through the crown of the good name, you have ufaratzta, b'mesir nefesh, b'nyani ma'asim, and a person has to do self-sacrifice to act on things. It's hard to sometimes cut the check. It's hard to sometimes give the tzedakah. It's hard to sometimes do something that you know you're supposed to do it, but you have to actually do it is much more difficult. And that Mesir Nefesh is the highest level of the crown, even higher than the crown of the good, of the temple, the crown of the king, the crown of the kahuna. And then you become Vayifr Tzi'ish Ma'id Ma'id, that Yaakov became extremely powerful. We have a few more minutes. The Rebbe then said the Maimer. That year was the Maimer on the difference between the candles of Hanukkah and the candles of Shabbos, which is a lot of the discussion in the Talmud when it comes to the question of what comes first, the Shabbos candles or the Hanukkah candles. And here the Rebbe finishes off the Farbrengen as follows. We know we're going into this Shabbos, also this year, is the Shabbos that we bless the month of Tevis. So the Rebbe says like this, it's brought down, al pasuk in the Talmud teaches us in Megillah, and the verse of the Megillah that says, V'atilkach Esther, that Esther took B'chodesh Asira in the 10th month, and the 10th month counting from Nisan is the month of Tevis, right? So Tevis is the 10th month, and Shvat is the 11th month, and Adar is the 12th month. So B'chodesh Asiri is the month of Tevis, which we're blessing this Shabbos. B'chodesh Tevis, which is the month of Tevis. Amar Chazal, our rabbis in the Talmud teach us that what's special about the month of Tevis, because in the northern hemisphere, Tevis is a winter, right? It's the most that's known as the winter month. It's a Yerach, it's the month Shaguf Nena Minaguf, which means literally that you want to be close to people because body heat heats up the person. So it's a month where people appreciate the next person because the next person helps you warm up. So it's a month Shaguf Nena Minaguf. The body takes pleasure from the next body. And what does this mean in that's also a symbol, that's a sign of marriage, of relationship, when two people are together. So what does this have to do with the marriage of Hashem and the Jewish people? If Tevis represents the month where Guf Nenem in a Guf, and in an appropriate way, it means in intimacy between a husband and wife. So what does that mean in Chodesh Teves? That's the month, that's the Tachas HaYichud, the month that there's an absolute oneness. like intimacy between HaKadosh Baruch Hu, between God and the Jewish people. Even though the Zohar teaches, there's another flip side to this idea. The Talmud says it's a month that guf nena min guf, but the Zohar, which means the body takes pleasure in the next body. But in Zohar says that Teves, and we just said that, and that means that the month of Teves is the highest month of oneness between the Jewish people and God. But the Zohar quotes that Teves is one of the months, one of the 3 months that are connected to the side of evil, the side of darkness. The other side. Here in a sense, Rebbe says it's the same thing. It's the same. That's the whole point. You want to know how you become really one with God? Not to stay in a safe place. Go to the darkest month of the year, Tevis, that the Zohar says is one of the dark months. What do we see from there? That the person usually wants to find protection in the soul. No, this is the month of the body, and therefore but in the body we find the whole point of elevation. We know that the body comes from a higher source than the soul. It's when Mashiach comes that the soul is going to nourish the body is going to nourish the soul. That we're the essence of the yesh, when you feel you're something, and what's the most something of a person is not their soul, is their body, comes from the true something of godliness. We don't see it. So we think we're something separate. When Mashiach comes, we're going to see how the body is the highest part. Mashiach comes, the soul is going to nourish off the body. Again, the Rebbe spoke about going out to a far place specifically. Go out to the furthest place, the darkest places, and try to be effective in our work in bringing the kavanah, bringing the intention of creation. The further you go, the more you're connected to the essence. Even though it may not make sense, the Rebbe says it doesn't mean anything because we all don't understand everything. We don't know really what light is. What's the essence? The Rebbe says, trust that one who's sending you. Means the Rebbe. Trust the Rebbe when the Rebbe tells you that you want to know where the essence is in the far out darkest place, that's the way it is. When it's Bara Keshlin in the Chanukah, and the Rebbe spoke about how that's connected to Chanukah, light and darkness, which is connected this week, which is getting ready for Chanukah. That year, Matzah Shabbos was already the first night of Chanukah, so therefore they didn't say that it's Katzcha, which is something we do not say when there's a holiday coming up. Beglal Yisrael Chanukah is because we're getting ready for Chanukah. She'inyane, with the idea of Chanukah, is lahar b'makom hayoyis tachtan, is to light up the furthest, lowest place. Shesham nimtzayim ragli tamridai, even the places with the feet of the people that rebel, right? The places where the rebellion is happening against God. That's where you're supposed to take the Chanukah candles and bring the light. And the kind of in short pen, the Rebbe says. That finishes off the Fabringen, and that finishes our class tonight. And I wish everyone a good Shabbos, a happy Chanukah for those who I don't see until Chanukah. And again, Mr. Shem, Shabbos, we have our class in Halacha with the story of the Baal Shem Tov.